We are almost at the end of this. Okay, so we open up with the gang in their natural habitat, running for their lives from the Fire Nation soldiers. It also is where we see Katara use ice in combat rather than just freezing someone. She got the idea from some earthbenders, and apparently we had many off-screen adventures, one of which involves Sokka being seduced by a Fire Nation soldier. Then we'd run into the burned-out forest, Heibai's forest. You get the idea. After the Fire Nation barged into the village, the land itself started twisting itself because it's pretty mad about the whole burning down the forest bit. Meanwhile, Zuko is pissed off at the incompetence of his crew, so what's new? And then we continue the plot point of Ozai pitting Azula and Zuko against each other, even saying that Zuko has the dedication worthy of an heir to the Fire Nation rather than Azula's coy whispers. I have a bit of a problem with this series. I may or may not have mentioned this before, but it feels like I'm being handheld a lot more than I did in the original series. I don't think Heibai's Shrine has ever been called Heibai's Shrine in the original series. We see it and sort of understand what it is. Here it's flat out called a shrine. We're also explained how Aang manages to pull Sokka and Katara into the spirit world with a long explanation about how, hey, weakened barriers, avatar powers, when you could have just said it's the winter solstice. The barrier between the spirit world and the material world is weaker, or just simply shrugged it off. Not every mystery needs to be explained. Apparently, in a broad strokes fashion, when we see Zuko in the tavern goers are discussing pirates, a canyon guide, and a village with a volcano, alluding to the waterbending scroll, the Great Divide, and the fortune teller episodes of the original series. Whether these are actually things that happened or just unsubstantiated rumors, you make the call. Then we get Arden Cho, who comes in as June and then has Nyla paralyze a guy, and she tells the guy, "Don't die, you idiot. I only get half if you die." Then we run into Wan Shi Tong with the gang. Once more, I feel annoyed that they call him the Spirit of Knowledge rather than the pretentious title of He Who Knows 10,000 Things, mainly because that title sounds, pretentious given Wan Shi Tong's characterization. I mean, he even has the same characterization, going on about how humans have too small mind to comprehend his speech, while the Avatar doesn't because, the Avatar, and how this world is dangerous and it will reveal the truth to humans, and all sorts of pretentious stuff that you'd expect from, Wan Shi Tong. I'm not even sure why they made this change. It perfectly works. On a smaller change that I find odd is that May's the one who stops Azula from cooking one of her martial arts instructors alive, implying that she doesn't fear Azula as much as she did in the original series, which, okay, so long as they capitalize on that dynamic in later seasons, I'll be happy. Later seasons, try episodes. Oh, and Azula's flames flash blue. Yeah, there's this quick blink and you miss thing in this series where she'll bend the standard color of fire that you would expect, and then you'll occasionally see flashes of blue. As the series progresses, it goes from being a blink and you miss bit to being a bit more noticeable, which, that is cool. That has to be a deliberate choice on the writer's part because, not the writer's, the animator's part. We get a lot more to Azula's arc and about how she always believes she isn't good enough, which Ozai is trying to capitalize on in order to make her his personal weapon. There's the way that they're making Azula's arc mirror Zuko's, and that's certainly a choice. At times, I feel like she's written as a female Zuko, and it doesn't help that, like I said, Mei and Ty Lee seem to actually follow her less out of fear and more out of genuine friendship. Then there is Heibai, cutting back to the gang. After a struggle where the gang realizes they can't bend in the spirit world because they have no bodies, they get separated and Sokka meets Yue. I feel perfectly content calling this fox Yue because this character sounds like the right age to play Yue, cracks a line like, "Do you always make jokes when you don't want to talk about something? Yeah. Forgive me for thinking this is Yue. Oh, and the camera lingers on the water tribe symbol on this tail ring. The tail is probably the hair we're probably going to use for her. I am very sure of this. It's not the hair, but you get the idea. It's the same color as the hair. I think this is Yue. I'm calling it now. I hope I am not wrong." They stumble into the Fog of Lost Souls. Yes, Ko the Face Stealer in this adaptation is the Fog of Lost Souls. They see their worst or painful memories. Katara's memory is obviously her mother's death. We see Sokka's most painful memory. It's basically how Sokka is told and even marked as a warrior of his tribe, though as noted, Sokka failed at ice dodging. and it turns out the praise Hakoda gave him earlier was false praise, and Sokka found out by eavesdropping. Yikes. This sounds like one of those Asian parent stories. Yeah, I'm not speaking from personal experience or anything. Aang runs into Ko, the face stealer, who apparently dislikes Kuruk because, the whole he stole Yumi's face bit, and Roku, because apparently Roku stole something from Ko the last time they had an encounter. You'd really expect Kyoshi to try to add to that trilogy of painful avatars Ko had to deal with, but nope. After talking to the ghost of Gyatso, Aang decides to return to his body and head towards the Fire Nation to go to Roku's temple. So naturally, we open up episode 6 right before Zuko's banishment, as in way before, like the meeting before he gets banished. We get scenes between a pissed off Zuko and Zhao, and the winter solstice is cut down a lot. We only spend like 5 minutes in the temple proper. Though Roku joking around with Aang does help get the pacing back on track because we've been moving at the speed of a heart attack. It's interesting that they depict Roku, not Kuruk, as the anti-Kyoshi. He even mocks her pose by standing uptight and stiff. He alludes to the fan perception that Kyoshi is a warrior when the world needed a diplomat, and Roku was a diplomat when the world needed a warrior. Elements of the comic, such as Ko's connection to the Mother of Faces being his, actual mother, is brought up in this adaptation, but really it's just a plot point. He literally does not actually have to work for the statue of the Mother of Faces. It's sorta just in the same room as Roku kept all the Avatar relics. This was super easy, barely an inconvenience. Then Aang gets captured by June and handed off to Zuko. Then Zhao gets Aang because we need to do the Blue Spirit plot. Okay, it's a bit more complex than that. You see, Azula and Zuko are in a competition for their dad's favor, and Azula has been manipulating everything behind the scenes in order to make sure that Zuko doesn't get the glory because he'll get to be heir. Honestly, that's quite interesting. Again, this show can be interesting. I don't understand why it's having a hard time being interesting. Blue Spirit time. Zuko breaks out Aang, and they have to fight their way out, even using the scaffolding to escape like the show. Obviously, the Yu Yan archers manage to injure Zuko, but Aang decides to take him to safety. I do like that they extended the conversation between Zuko and Aang. Aang's attempts at making small talk with Zuko is legitimately amusing, and it sounds like something Aang would do. I do know it's odd to get excited over the conversation over whether a calligraphy brush should have what kind of hair, but hey, it is small talk, and friends need to make small talk, and if you want to make them friends later on, you're gonna have to start somewhere. Then we see the rest of the flashback with Zuko and the Agni Kai. So glad they added the Ozai and Iroh interaction scenes because I don't think they interacted at all in the original series. One of the best changes to this series, even though it's a very small thing, is that the 41st Battalion that Ozai wanted to sacrifice in order to win a victory, the same 41st Battalion that Zuko said was a very awful thing to sacrifice, became the crew of Zuko's ship in order to hunt for the Avatar. We end, and Ko upholds his end of the bargain with the whole I'm going to release everyone I captured into the spirit world bit. Okay, where do I stand? I stand that episode 5 was a mess. It's one of those episodes that really needed time for exposition to settle, especially since this is the spirit world. You want to emphasize the mystery and the strangeness of it all, so the best way to do that is to tone down the exposition and not explain things. Be consistent, but don't give us all the answers right away. Said exposition was also delivered in a very clunky and ham-fisted manner. You also probably guessed that the plot threads that made their way from episode 5 into episode 6 were the weakest parts of episode 6. When we get into the Aang getting captured by Zuko and in turn being captured by Zhao, this picks up the pace. And by pace, I mean quality. We get a nice through line. Zuko, his past, his motives, and how it all relates to Aang. We get the flashbacks, which only add depth rather than subtract from the story. We also expand on some moments from the original series, which I find very well done. It helps bring depth to the character. Just these moments where the characters are sitting down and given time to breathe makes a lot of difference in the quality of the episode. I do like that Ozai is petty enough to make the 41st the men he wanted to sacrifice in battle and force them to be Zuko's crew out of petty spite. Even after being burned by Ozai, Zuko still says the 41st should not be sacrificed. Moments like these are powerful, and I wish more episodes were like episode 6. We're almost done with these series. Please consider liking, subscribing, tipping this channel on Ko-fi. This is Cyril signing off.